So the topic is next steps for Drupal Commerce. For those that don't know me, I'm Ryan Szrama. I was the creator, lead developer of UberCart, which was developed on Drupal 5 to sort of displace the e-commerce module, which had been around for a couple versions of Drupal, but was not sufficient for my business's needs. We were using OS Commerce to power a web shop that sold restaurant equipment online. Most of our business came through eBay, and around the time that I left, I probably shouldn't disclose, transaction volumes, whatever. We were doing a lot of sales, and we really did most of our customer service through the website. So updating orders, managing orders, taking payment, remotely, in person, etc. Everything ran through the website. And what we didn't have in the e-commerce project was a user interface that our store administrators could actually use. It just wasn't very, UI driven. The project wasn't at the time, and I suppose that means it wasn't really in use on high volume sites or in very complicated sites or whatever. So we decided that we didn't have the most complicated e-commerce site in the world. It was really just physical product sales, but we wanted to take what we had in OS Commerce, rebuild it in Drupal, and thus UberCart was born. And the scope of UberCart quickly expanded as I got to know the Drupal community, because I hadn't been a part of Drupal significantly before that. I was an occasional user. I had run like a Drupal 4.6 blog or something, but that was as early as my time with Drupal went. So I just got to know the Drupal community, find out what folks were actually using Drupal for to do commerce. And so UberCart sort of changed and grew and everything, and it kind of became this thing where there were like 25,000 people using it by the time I stopped working on it, to power anything from digital downloads to subscription management to online training course sales and the physical product sales, domestic, international, multilingual, multi-currency, etc. And we found out there were some things that it was good at, and there were many things that it was not good at. And part of that was because we had this mentality that we needed to recreate an e-commerce application, OS Commerce, using a set of modules inside of Drupal, UberCart. And so you click on all of the modules, and you had a store out of the box that sort of hard-coded assumptions about your data model, about your business model, your business needs, reporting needs. It was actually very difficult to work with from a flexibility standpoint, even though it was still technically modular Drupal. So thus, Drupal Commerce was born. I was at Commerce Guys at the time. I went to Commerce Guys in 2009. And about the same time, I started having children as well, so I can throw the family pic up there. My daughter was just born when I joined Commerce Guys. So I guess she was, no, I guess she was born in 2000. So yeah, she was just born about the time that we started Drupal Commerce, actually. So they're about the same age. One of my children is much more adorable and much more rewarding, but Drupal Commerce is also still pretty and rewarding as well. But with Commerce Guys, we started Drupal Commerce from the ground up. My family has grown again since then, and maybe he'll represent our plans for Drupal Commerce on Drupal 8 or something. Because he was actually, I'm trying to think of timing here. I believe he was not conceived yet at DrupalCon London. I'm trying to remember the timing here. That he was still a twinkle in my eye, but shortly thereafter he became a reality. So my family and my company and myself, my career, my profession, we've all sort of grown up and matured and developed at the same time. And what I hope to do now is talk about the future. Not necessarily the future of my family, but more about the future of Drupal Commerce. And so we will look at some things that are like sort of the present status of things with Drupal Commerce itself, with our distribution, Commerce Kickstart, how that has kind of brought us full circle to where we went from UberCart with the application mindset to Drupal Commerce with this framework, flexibility mindset, back to having an application, but doing it at the installation profile level or the Drupal distribution level with Commerce Kickstart. So I'll talk about that, talk about the Commerce Marketplace, which is sort of key to our vision to make it easier for people to come online using Drupal. So with the Marketplace, trying to connect people to the services that they need to do commerce online. We have two things that are more or less like about beta ready. Just a mobile app connector, like a sort of easy way to connect a native mobile app to a Drupal Commerce site, or specifically a Commerce Kickstart site. And then the Commerce Platform, which is more of a sort of holistic hosting platform for Drupal-based e-commerce sites. That in many cases is similar to the existing Drupal platform as a service offerings, but in some key areas, different or more. And then we will spend the remainder of the time talking about the next version of Drupal Commerce. So always forward thinking. Drupal 8 is staring us down right now, projected to be out by the end of the year. At once upon a time, it was projected to be out by Prague. So I've gained 4 months by just waiting, and I don't know about the end of the year either. I'm not directly contributing to it, so I can't really speak bad about it. I just know what happened with Drupal 7 and the release date kind of slipping and benefiting us ultimately, because it takes a long time to write commerce code and then put that onto a new platform. So hey, the more time, the better for us. It really just means we can sort of delay our start date, have a more ambitious target, and make more sweeping changes to make using Drupal Commerce both times more easy and more complex. Like we can do more complicated things on Drupal 8 than we could with Drupal 7, and we can make them actually easier to achieve. So without further ado, presenting the big idea. So this is what I always have had in mind, at least since DrupalCon Chicago, is that with Drupal Commerce, we're not just trying to do business on Drupal. We're not just trying to make it easy for people to sell stuff or to have a community that maybe has a side show of selling a subscription or taking donations or something. Really, we would love for Drupal and Drupal Commerce to be the #1 open source e-commerce platform in the world. And we think it's quite achievable. Otherwise, we wouldn't be spending so much time and money chasing that dream. We already have, because of Drupal and because of the way we were able to architect Drupal Commerce on Drupal 7, the most flexible e-commerce system on the market. And even though we aren't a big player or an enterprise solution, we still win bids, at least within Commerce Guys and through our integration partners, against Hybris and Magento and Demandware and IBM and all these other platforms. Like, it's not that we're winning every single one, or I might be wearing a nicer t-shirt and jeans, but we are winning some. And so people are buying into the idea that Drupal Commerce is truly flexible commerce. I can use it for my big sites. I can use it for my small sites. I can use it in a case where I need multi-domains for different countries with different pricing, different languages, or I can use it and never show it to the world at all as a commerce application server and have these different client sites that just communicate with that via the Commerce Services module in our REST API. So it's already making these inroads, and we still have more to do to prove Drupal in general and Drupal Commerce by extension to the market, but that's what we're doing. And basically, if you're in this room and you're considering using Drupal Commerce, you would actually sort of de facto become part of this vision, because all of our users in turn become our contributors, and they become our bug reporters, our feature proposers, and just our eyes and ears on the ground when you're actually listening to a merchant and finding out how they expect their software to work, and more specifically the other things they need the software to work with. You all sort of enrich Drupal Commerce to help us power what we say is truly flexible e-commerce. It actually meets real needs. I mean, I like this picture that Josh kind of put together for us that shows that we actually have done some cool stuff as a Drupal community. I'm not sure which brands we would recognize on here or not, but my favorite one may be this one. See, the prestigious Cheese Society is, it's me eating my own dog food. So bringing the Amish online is part of my job description. I sell Amish cheese. But there are, the big companies, the fashion houses of Paris, Kinzo and Cartier, because of our relationship with the integrators there, have come on board with Drupal Commerce. Big companies or organizations in the UK are starting to come on board as well. And in the US, we're still kind of looking for who that's going to be. It's actually a lot harder when you're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, to get an in at the major integration shops of the US, because, oh yeah, they aren't actually in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But there are folks in Paris and in London where our European offices are. So we've had some good success and some awesome sites from around the world selling, Italian sweets, Israeli furniture and home goods, and what else is? Oh yeah, Open Sesame online training course marketplace. I know a guy in Greenville, where I'm from, who actually sells access to online training videos for trumpeters or trumpeters. So he's actually teaching folks how to play the trumpet online and hosting online concerts using Drupal Commerce to charge the entrance. So it's all over the place, and it's not just one type of store, or one type of e-commerce site. Whoa. Need answer or else. Yeah. So anyway, so this is where we are. And right now, if you go to DrupalCommerce.org, you can see the showcase. It's filling up with more of these demonstration, proof of concept sites that talk about how to use this or that contributor module, connect with this gateway, implement this business model or business rule, and you're going to see what's happening, and we want to see that continue to grow. So let's talk about why that's happened within the Drupal community itself. The reason we've had great early traction and early buy-in from the other Drupal shops at least is because we were optimized for developers. We made sure that when we implemented Drupal Commerce systems, they were as close to Drupal core as they possibly could be. That meant that we used the Forms API properly. It meant that we built all of our displays using views, even to the point that we got views to include views form functionality in Drupal 7 so that we can actually power and build our shopping cart form using the views module, which was not possible before Drupal Commerce. It means using the rules module, just like all of the other major contributor modules, driving all of our business logic through rules, and therefore feeding into the rules development roadmap and getting patches, bug fixes, features added to that, performance patches, as a result of Drupal Commerce. And so Drupal developers inherently know how to work with commerce because they've already been working with views and rules and fieldable entities and so on and so forth. So that's great. It got us early buy-in from Drupal shops. We have, I'm pretty sure that nowadays we have more contributor modules in the Drupal Commerce on D7 ecosystem than we did with UberCard on Drupal 6. I'm not entirely sure where they stand on 7 now because I made a clean break to start afresh. But it got us that early traction that we needed to make the case to the CTOs of these integration companies that are now driving adoption of Drupal Commerce at the high end. And then those companies are in return sort of trickling down improvements through the commerce community and Drupal in general, such that within Drupal 8 we now have an entity reference field module that was a direct result of one of our commerce projects. So we have talked about Drupal Commerce as being a flexible e-commerce framework. And we've made it a point to say it's built on Drupal 7. Which means nothing to somebody that's outside of the Drupal community, and it certainly doesn't mean anything to a marketing director in an e-commerce business. All right, so we've also said we don't hard code business logic thanks to rules and views. Again, speaks to developers. Nobody outside the Drupal community knows why rules and views are important. Same thing with fieldable entities, same thing when we talk about maintaining a core versus contrib, or using Drupal distributions to reach particular vertical markets. All of these things, it sort of reflects a philosophy that said we needed to get the framework and the data model and the architecture right first, and then figure out how to grow from there. So what ended up happening was, whereas I maybe expected the community to provide solutions that made these things make sense to the average merchant, really, just kind of learn you just can't depend on that happening on its own. That would have been what I would have said. Hey, we have this division between products and product displays, and I'm sure some contributor module will make it easier to work with because everybody's going to have this problem, right? So somebody's going to fix it. And we kind of started strong by getting a Google Summer of Code student on board to write what we called the bulk product creation module. But then he left, and that fizzled, and nobody could use it, and so on and so forth. We basically ended up having to solve this ourselves a year and a half later within Kickstart directly. So the kind of simplification that maybe we expected would kind of magically appear in Contrib didn't actually work that way. So we ended up leaving behind our end users, so the people that had to take a commerce site and then use it from day to day to manage a product catalog, to manage orders, to debug payments, to view reports. And so we couldn't answer questions like this, how will this software help me make money? And that's a bit of a false question because a tool doesn't make you money on its own, but a tool can tell you how it is making you money, and in that case, it has made me more profitable because I got good data from it, good analysis, good reports, good ways to optimize my conversion rates and reduce my cart abandonment and all that stuff. And so if you ever went to magentocommerce.com while we were developing Drupal Commerce 1.x, you would have seen the difference. One is, it's a flexible e-commerce framework, and the other one is the platform for growth. The e-commerce industry is doubling year over year, and we're going to make sure that you capture as much of that business as possible. And look, here's a report that proves you made more money this year. And so it's a bit psychological, but it's a real question that people have that we ought to be able to answer from a software standpoint. So how does this software help me make more money? How can I see what's happening in my store? So in other words, if I get 1,000 customers accessing my website this month, well, why aren't they all buying from me? Where did they abandon the checkout process? Or if they put something in the cart, why did they never drive to checkout completion? And we couldn't really answer that question because what we had decided was, hey, we're going to revision everything. And so if we have order revisions and line item revisions, then we can actually see all of the changes that happen to this cart throughout your whole checkout process and find where they abandoned and so on and so forth. And what really ended up happening was everybody had huge revision tables and they could do nothing with the data. Because yes, Drupal was a fine data store, but there weren't the tools, certainly not in Views at the time, and probably still not, to really analyze revision data. It just doesn't exist. And so instead, now you'll see we actually integrate with Giraffe, an analytics solution that's geared toward visualizing e-commerce analytics and helping you understand what's happening in your store. All right, more questions. Did that email that I sent out actually result in any sales? That, to me, as a small business, that's actually really difficult to know. I spent all this time and money growing my mailing list and then crafting a newsletter, and I sent it out, and well, did I actually get any return on that investment? And then, again, what's this about products? This product data model you're talking about, dividing things and SKUs and product displays, and so we didn't do a good job of addressing the end users, but that was okay with us because it was a matter of priority. We were prioritizing getting the fundamental architecture right and then addressing the user interface, user experience second, because I knew from UberCart that it's much better to have a solid data model, or much easier to have a solid data model and build a usability layer on top of that than it is to have something that works out of the box but can't be changed, deeper down or I don't know if it's higher up or lower down in the stack or something. But anyways, so that's where Commerce Kickstart 2.x came from. Has anybody used this distribution before or been trained on it this morning? I saw maybe a dozen hands go up. Yeah. So what it is it's a full distribution of Drupal that looks and acts like an actual e-commerce website out of the box. So it's not just Drupal with the Bartik theme and some Spartan demo content. It actually has its own theme, its own front end and back end tweaks that make it look and behave and sort of act as if it was an actual application. It was like a use case specific application developed to do commerce online, like a Magento or an OS Commerce or ZenCard or whatever it is that the cool kids are using these days. We also wanted to solve the store administrator user experience. So the day-to-day headaches of managing the product catalog and orders specifically, but also configuring things like taxes or discounts or coupons or other things like that. And we wanted to sort of have this experience of targeting a market segment and optimizing Drupal Commerce for that because we wanted to reproduce this. So Commerce Kickstart is a distribution, but we want to see multiple distributions that address different market segments. So this one is optimized for physical product sales with a pretty product catalog with faceted search and product images and all that stuff. But I would love to see one for digital sales, and I'd love to see another one for private sales, and maybe another one for auctions, and another one for multilingual, multi-currency kind of stuff. So we really want to see that kind of differentiation happening at the distribution level. In fact, there are two. One of the first that came out was the daily deals distribution called Open Deals. And then the conference organizing distribution, COD it's called in the Drupal community, is a commerce distribution that is specifically geared around launching a conference or DrupalCamp or BarCamp website. So we needed that experience, and then we also wanted to speak the merchant's language so we could actually start to sell Drupal Commerce outside of the Drupal community. So it's one thing to get Drupal devs on board. It's another thing to actually start bringing clients to the table, because as soon as the money comes in for these integrations, then the Drupal dev shops have more incentive to continue to build out more modules and contribute them back and talk about it, and it's sort of a self-feeding thing. So when I show the contrast, I like to say that it's pretty obvious that what we did was useful, because you look at Commerce Kickstart 1 out of the box was just a bare bones D7 install with Commerce and its dependencies, versus a Commerce Kickstart 2 out of the box. And hey, it actually looks like a store might look, with marketing areas and slideshows and an actual catalog across the top, with faceted search built in and a theme that's all optimized around emphasizing the add to cart and the checkout process and all that stuff that actually makes e-commerce work. So this isn't enough, though. It's not enough just to have a distribution and put it out there and say, okay, now everyone can do e-commerce, right? And the reason it's not enough is because e-commerce rarely happens like on your site, as if your site is the only part of your e-commerce experience. You have analytics that you need to tie into. You have performance optimization that you need to tie into. Of course, everybody has a payment gateway. You have shipping services that you're talking to get carrier calculated rates. Maybe a fulfillment system that actually manages your fulfillment, like a Shipwire or an Amazon. And then accounting and ERP systems, all these other systems that your Drupal site needs to talk to. And so to begin to bring these people to the Drupal community, we launched what we call the Commerce Marketplace. And this is where we are beginning to get the PayPals and Amazons and giraffes of the e-commerce world to invest in the Drupal community and come to the Drupal community. They were at DrupalCon Portland with us, exhibiting with us in our booth, to sort of make the case for their products and services within the Drupal community as the simplest, fastest way to basically launch a new e-commerce site. And so you can do this all from one place in the marketplace, and we sort of build that into Commerce Kickstart. So you could actually kind of use this to accelerate, which is why we call it the Kickstart distribution. You can kickstart your next commerce project by grabbing the distro, grabbing those services, committing it all to Git, and then working from there to do your customizations and site build and all that stuff. So these things are already in place. I think the marketplace has about, 8 integrated services so far, with more in the pipeline. And we're actually, more than happy to entertain, your recommendations for what sort of services would be most helpful for the type of sites that you are building. So that's there. Definitely interested in feedback. Yeah. And so then the next thing that we developed was the Commerce mobile app. And I have this on my phone. We don't have a demo in the App Store right now because we don't have a DUNS number yet, which you have to have to publish in the Apple App Store. We'll get there. But the idea here is that I mentioned before we had an early project where we created a commerce application server that then spoke to satellite websites to sell postage and fishing licenses and other things. We took that code from that client and created the Commerce Services project, where we basically facilitate turning your commerce site into an API, a REST API to interact with your commerce engine. And so using that module, the mobile app can basically connect to the resources that we expose and browse the product catalog, fetch and render product displays within iOS. It can work on Android as well because we used Titanium Accelerator. And then also create shopping carts that are managed through the website, so you can then check out using a sort of web browser window frame within the app itself. So this is sort of one of the things that Commerce Guys is trying to do to make launching big e-commerce projects on Drupal a more viable or interesting opportunity for Drupal dev shops and integrators. Yeah?
Yeah, quick question right now. With a solution like that, can you just have one app? Because that's something like each individual store, each individual company is going to want for themselves.
Yeah. So the question was, can you really just have one app? Or wouldn't everybody want it for themselves? And the answer is yes. What we have is a reference app that we would then customize for each company and sort of treat Commerce Guys as a software publisher, publishing the app on your behalf, and then managing updates and new features and that kind of stuff. And so it's a subscription model. But I'm happy to talk about that afterwards if you're curious or want to get your hands on it. So, So we're trying to basically make it easier for people to pitch and win commerce bids because, well, every other e-commerce system has a mobile app, and we want a mobile app too. And, well, if you can't do it, we won't consider you. So it's kind of like the whole the PayPal problem, which is that no developer likes working with PayPal, but every e-commerce project needs PayPal. No, I'm not even going to go there. I'm just not. I got to hold my tongue. The other thing that we're doing in-house and is about at the same stage as Commerce Mobile, it's demo ready, open beta is not up yet, is the Commerce Platform, which is the idea that not only can we package up commerce in a way that merchants and marketers can understand it and begin to understand the power of Drupal itself, we want to provide a hosting environment, which we call Commerce Platform, where we can optimize the environment for doing e-commerce specifically with Drupal. So that extends to how we manage the Git repository and spawn child development sandboxes and all that kind of stuff, to how we assume SSL and assume transactional email and assume payment gateway and start to tie all these things together through one platform. So what we're really trying to do is make Drupal Commerce the #1 open source e-commerce platform in the world by building a sort of ecosystem of services that either we have developed or integrated with to really facilitate doing commerce with Drupal. And there's still a lot of areas where there's just a lot that needs to happen still, specifically around actually building marketing tools for Drupal and for Drupal Commerce, which is why it's exciting to me to see Valachi make the move into product development with Automator. Tools like that are going to help Drupal-based businesses really have a leg up on the competition when they can take your, lead scoring, marketing automation stuff and embed that directly into Drupal and expose that data to rules, so suddenly your product pricing can be influenced by someone's, by your customer's activity on your site in real time. So there's some cool stuff that can happen there that I'd love to see, more of that kind of stuff, come to fruition. So let's talk about Commerce 2.x and the Commerce roadmap, and then I will stop talking and entertain questions. And what I'm going to do is actually, let's just throw all the introduction points up there. The idea was that our Commerce roadmap really kind of began before it was published, and that's because we have active contributors within Commerce Guys to Drupal 8. And they are working on the kinds of things that are going to make the next version of Drupal Commerce even more powerful, while at the same time even more easier to use. So we consider that Commerce 2.x development began when Drupal 8 core development began. And we've encouraged and supported our employees who have been contributing to that process, either as initiative owners like Chris Vanderwater or feature contributors like Andre Matiscu, who is big on the entity reference field in core. We're really trying to foster that, that desire or drive within our company. And then as soon as we have a minor release out of Drupal, we were going to open the 2.x branch. And so Dries read my post about that on drupalcommerce.org/roadmap and said, well, I can tag an alpha. And so he actually tagged an alpha that kind of forced my hand to start developing for Drupal 8. So I've said it, and we've committed to it, and it actually hasn't happened yet. He tagged it just before Portland, and he kind of got the jump on me. I wasn't expecting that. So we are going to begin probably after I get home from DrupalCamp Austin. But the idea here is we want to re-architect around the major changes in Drupal 8. So just like whenever we built Drupal Commerce from the ground up on D7, it was a complete re-envisioning of commerce on Drupal to take advantage of the fieldable entity system and views and rules and entity API. We want to do the same thing on Drupal 8 and address common configuration challenges, development challenges specifically pertaining to the data model of products and product displays, and then also the APIs around price manipulation and payment method configuration, other stuff like that. And I'm going to get into our development emphases. I guess I can actually probably just skip this slide. It's just a timeline that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because these times all kind of slipped, and that's not going to be there anymore. But whatever. We will open. Yeah, and I don't even know. Wow, that's really optimistic. Apparently, we were supposed to open a 2.x branch of Commerce in I can't count backwards in months. July, July of 2012. Oh, we did have a sandbox. Okay, okay. We're going to delete it, but whatever. Our goal, of course, is to actually have a beta. This part is still right, regardless of the date. is to have a Drupal Commerce 2.x beta at the same time as Drupal 8 launches. Major things I expect to be missing will be the rules user interface. And that's probably it. I think everything else will be there, but I don't expect rules itself to have a UI for D8 by that time. I'd love to be surprised. But keeping in line with one of our development emphases here, that really won't matter so much. Okay, so what are the key things that we're sort of applying like a broad brush to Drupal Commerce 2? The first thing is sort of furthering the understanding of your e-commerce website being a conduit as opposed to a container. And this isn't a new idea. It was something that we started developing Drupal Commerce 1 with. But it's the idea that the commerce application, where it sits in the stack of your business life online, is really a pipe. Most people, at least once they hit a certain scale, I don't know exactly where that is, a few million transactions a year. Maybe it varies depending on how big your transactions are. But most people aren't managing all their commerce through their website. Now for small merchants, that's totally cool. The kind of person that's like maybe one step above a Shopify or Volusion or a BigCommerce, like maybe they do still manage all of their commerce through their website. And we want Drupal Commerce to be able to accommodate that. And we think that Commerce 2.x kind of proves that that can be done at a certain scale. We still want to privilege the idea that the commerce site and where Drupal sits in your stack it is a conduit. It's designed to get sales data into the necessary accounting systems and fulfillment systems and other systems, your marketing data into your well, I guess Automator, your marketing automation system, or probably more specifically for e-commerce, your newsletter management system, all that stuff. So we want to make sure that that we are taking full advantage of the REST module. That's going to be a core component of Drupal 8. So that we have rich resources for accessing your e-commerce data from remote systems and for consuming that data from other systems. So that we have done that in Commerce 1.x through our migrate and feeds integration. I think we can do more, and especially on Drupal 8, when the core itself is doing more, we'll have bigger shoulders to stand on or taller shoulders to stand on. We also need to get better at serving the majority use case. So there are a few features in Drupal Commerce that are, I guess I would call like premature power features. We really optimized for like the most complicated use case and then forced everyone else to sort of deal. So these are things like the shopping cart refresh. So it's the idea that every time the shopping cart order is loaded, we're recalculating product prices to see if anything has changed. Is this product no longer available? Has the price been updated? Has the fact that 1 minute passed expired your early bird discount that you thought you were going to get but you were too late for? That kind of thing. We thought, oh, there's so many good reasons to recalculate on every load. But practically speaking, most people's prices just aren't changing at the speed of a click. And yet we still recalculate those prices. And it doesn't result in more hits to the database because we only save if something has actually changed. But there still is that recalculation on every single page load that is unnecessary. And there's also just that, what I mentioned earlier, the idea that, well, we'll maintain an order revision every time anything changes, sort of defaulting to create a new revision on any change. Because we thought, well, this would be interesting data for your marketing team to analyze and then optimize your conversion process or optimize your checkout form. Realistically, like that's just not the place for that data. It belongs in an analytics system where you actually have good visualizations and good ability to produce reports and all that stuff. So instead of trying to, I didn't even mention the biggest one. Has anybody used product price pre-calculation? Yes. All right. I was expecting no hands to go up because very few people have. But it was the idea that because we decided to force all of the product pricing in commerce to happen through rules. So you can't just write a module that has a hook that hooks into the pricing system. You have to do everything through rules. And the reason was, if I know if the conditions on any given rule would evaluate to true at this point in time, I can sort of create a cache or a compiled table, or I don't know what I would call it. But basically, like you can create a table in the database that has every possible variation of every possible price in your store. And then sort of key these things by condition sets and then sort of actually write a query to fetch these pre-calculated prices and filter and sort your views and search listings by the actual calculated price instead of the price as it is stored in the database. So, I mean, the fact that, who cares? It's a feature that nobody uses and nobody's going to use. We thought it would be an essential thing for us to get right, and so we forced everyone to use rules to do their product pricing because of this constraint that nobody actually needs. So we need to stop serving this like super minority use case that it's like a power feature and actually serve the majority of users, which most people would prefer to be able to write a hook to hook into the pricing system. Instead, now people just write a custom rules action and put all of the logic in there. So it actually makes it practically useless for price pre-calculation. So why not just make that available? Anyways, the other two things are to use explicit configuration instead of implicit behavior. And I feel like we've actually done a decent job of weeding out those areas in commerce where we just kind of made stuff happen by magic. So early commerce users may remember that to create a product attribute field, it used to just depend on you using the right type of field with a single, I think it was like single value, had to have a limited number of options and something else. But basically, like if you met these conditions for which there was no indication in the user interface, well, then that field would be used as an attribute field on the add to cart form. And nobody could get it. It was pretty confusing. And so finally, I was like, wait a minute. What if I just put a checkbox on fields where that worked and said, hey, make this an attribute field on the add to cart form? Now, that checkbox can still be overlooked. I overlook it sometimes. But it is explicit configuration now. And so there were a couple other areas like that where we want to start using, exactly what it says. Okay, and then last but not least, build and use robust internal APIs. So instead of forcing people to learn how our various rules actions that manipulate product prices work in order to work with the pricing system, let's actually have an API for manipulating product prices and then consume that from our actions. Instead of kind of doing the Drupal thing and programming form submission handlers and action callbacks to do all the stuff, let's actually have an API that does that stuff and then invoke the API from those submit handlers, validate handlers, callbacks, and etc. So again, like some of that has happened, but specifically around pricing and taxes, there's more to be done there. So there are some actual core tasks for us to take advantage to do to take advantage of new Drupal 8 features. I already mentioned one being the entity reference field. So we can actually get rid of thousands of lines of Drupal Commerce code by using entity reference instead of the product reference, line item reference, and customer profile reference fields. Additionally, we developed this handy module for Commerce Kickstart 2 called the inline entity form that lets you create products or customer profiles or whatever inline in the node or product or order form. Let's use that and then get rid of all of our custom widgets as well. So we can actually like almost got 3 modules in Drupal Commerce 1.x by taking advantage of a new core module, entity reference in D8, and then adding one more dependency on the inline entity form module, which is still going to be in contrib for Drupal 8. We also need to update all of our core views integration and entity API usage to use the views in core, which is a Drupal 8 thing if you didn't know. And then to use the new typed data API, which is more or less what we get from the entity metadata wrapper, which is part of the entity API module. It's this thing that lets you easily traverse and manipulate your entity and field data. We now have that in core Drupal 8 and can get rid of a lot of workaround code as well for that. So again, just converting things to new systems. We have a new plugin system in the core of Drupal 8. So we can convert our actions and conditions to be core plugins. And then also convert other commerce data structures to be plugin types and plugin, I think they call them variants or something. But basically, any of our, or most of our custom info structures like a payment method or a checkout pane, these things can be sort of standardized on the core plugin system now, which is great. And we're going to add a 6th entity type to Drupal Commerce, and this will be the store entity type. Yeah, and I mean right now, Drupal Commerce kind of assumes the website is the store, but it doesn't actually give you a place, say, to define where your address is. So if you're calculating shipping and you have to do it from a fixed point, well, it's helpful to have this store entity that you can then sort of use rules to grab the default address from and then supply the other address from the order and then process your calculation. So we will have a store entity type. You can have multiple of them. So if you're doing multi-seller, you don't have to depend on some secondary entity type like an organic group or a user profile or something. You can have this in Drupal Commerce itself. And then, honestly, the rest of the core of commerce will look this, pretty much the same. We will still have the same types of entities, but we will make a few key changes that are really, again, built around getting rid of some of the common configuration development challenges. The biggest one I've already mentioned is changing the way that we deal with products. Maybe this is actually yes. Okay. Changing the way that we deal with the product data model. So commerce users will be familiar with the idea that you have your product entity type, and then you have a node type that has a product reference field, and that kind of becomes your front-end product display. And it works great. It does exactly what we intended it to do. It gave us all the benefits we expected out of separating the display from the definition, but it's still not the simplest way to do things. And at the time that we sort of were building and launching Commerce 1.x, there were still things that were very node specific that will have been fixed now that Drupal 8 is coming out. So for example, the comment module in Drupal 7 can only add comments to nodes. Why not any other type of entity? Well, it just didn't happen in D7. In D8, of course, we expect that to be there. So what we've decided is that we will actually allow product types to have displays, basically inherently be displayed on the front end. We will provide the integration to give them search engine friendly URLs and sort of still make it optional so you don't have to have products with displays if you don't want them to. But we actually want to privilege products a bit further so that you don't have to have that separation between the node and the product, because node will no longer be special. There's no reason for us to use that model anymore. But also because we think we can actually start to manage product hierarchies better. So the scenario of dependent product attributes or bulk product creation. We want to be able to say, if you have a product type that has an attribute field on it, click a button, submit one form to have the whole group created and managed all at once. So we want to make that a core concern. And then specifically deal with that scenario where maybe you have t-shirts of a different size and a different color. And maybe you don't want to have to upload an image for all of the different size options like you do currently. What if we had a hierarchy where you just have to put the image field in at this level, and then it automatically propagates out to the next level down where all of your sizes reside? So we're going to do that. I can talk about that more elsewhere. I'm going to speed up a bit because we're running out of time. So let's just throw these all up on the screen, and I'll just kind of call them out. Basically, we also want to move the Commerce Customizable Products module into core and make it easier to have that sort of dynamic product builder form, like the pizza scenario or the build your own computer scenario. We want to make the checkout form a bit more dynamic. Right now, we do have like a checkout form drag and drop builder, but it's it's one of those things that like we developed a whole interface for something that you touch once and then you leave it alone for the rest of the life of your store. So trying to figure out how we can make that more of a useful tool and also improve the way that we process the checkout form submission. Right now we go down checkout pane by checkout pane and basically validate and submit the data from each checkout pane independently. So we have this checkout form. It's got all these field sets. This field set will be validated and submitted. The next one will be validated and submitted, whether the first one had errors or not. And so what we did this for was to actually capture all of the data on the form that we could. Even if there were errors, it wouldn't save the rest of the bits of the form from saving data to the order. Again, this is a bit of that premature power feature optimization, because what happened was we ended up with payment forms perhaps being on the same page as the billing address. And if somebody screwed something up in their billing address, well, the payment pane would then still try to validate and submit itself. But of course, because there were other errors on the page, it didn't have all of the data that it needed. And so that kind of stuff happening, or worse, it would actually submit and process a payment, but because there was some other error on the page, well, as far as the customer knew, they hadn't paid, so then they would fix the error on the page and submit the page again and have double payment. So we had to patch Drupal Commerce, I think it was 1.6, it might have been 1.5, to sort of introduce the idea that the payment pane is dependent on the successful validation submission of every other checkout pane on the page. So we need to actually bring that to be a more generic core concern within Commerce 2.x. There are other things we want to solve with respect to payment method configuration, making it easier to have alterable payment method configurations, defining payment methods outside of rules, but then just enabling them in rules so that all of your configuration isn't locked away in an anonymous rules column of the database somewhere, that kind of stuff. And Yay, just make everything else that's there better. So the full roadmap is actually up on drupalcommerce.org/roadmap. So if you're interested in contributing or using Commerce on D8, I'd encourage you to go check it out, leave some comments there, get in touch with me directly, either through IRC or Twitter, or drupalcommerce.org or something, and just sort of tell us, what did we miss? What have you, what problems have you experienced implementing Drupal Commerce, and how can we revise the product roadmap for Commerce 2.x to actually address those issues? Because if you've dealt with it, I'm sure that somebody else has. We're up to about 28,000 installs now, so the law of percentages applies here. I think that we have a good feel for the common challenges, and we'd love for those things to be reflected in the roadmap. And then finally, if you haven't used Commerce yet, it'd be great if you got Commerce Kickstart 2.x and let us know what you think. You can actually sign up for a free Pantheon account at getpantheon.com, and they give you 2 free dev sites, and whenever you create one of those sites, you can actually choose to install Commerce Kickstart 2.x, and they will set it up for you, and it's really fast. It's actually the fastest development environment I've used for Kickstart 2.x, so I'd encourage you to try it out, let us know what you think, and what we can do better. And man, we're getting close to the time for the next session, but until the next speaker shows up, I'm happy to entertain questions, and then I will get out of the way. So, yes, in the back.
What about sites that are more content-focused rather than product sales? Some sites use commerce as a way of selling subscriptions. Do you know of any differences that would affect those kind of sites, or any big plans for
Yeah. Yeah, the question was how might we improve Drupal Commerce to better support the sort of non-tangible, non-physical goods sales of like content subscriptions or premium access, that kind of thing. And my general answer for that kind of thing is that, well, rules already kind of does most everything that you need to accomplish that kind of scenario. Like, I wouldn't build that kind of a site using Commerce Kickstart. I'd start with a more rational foundation for that. And then, because you need less out of your commerce for that kind of scenario. But one of the things that we have just released is the Commerce Recurring Framework and an updated version of the Card on File module, which facilitates storing credit card data at a payment gateway and then charging it on a recurring basis. We didn't have a great recurring framework for commerce until really maybe 1 or 2 months ago. It was something we developed for the marketplace partners. And so, that would be the tool to use and to check out and let us know, where it falls short. Because that's probably the main feature for someone like that that's doing subscription management. So check that out. Yeah, up front.
Question for data entry. Especially some of my clients are small businesses. They're not computer savvy, and they like to enter data. And so some user interface issues would probably help.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes mass data entry, and with mass editing, and sometimes uploading pictures for every product.
Yeah.
It gets challenging for these guys.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to facilitate?
Yeah. So the question here was what about bulk content creation, updating, catalog management? What sort of features might there be for that, or what might we do to improve commerce to better facilitate that? And I'll actually hop over to the Commerce Kickstart 2 window, because the idea with Commerce Kickstart 2 was that we have sort of abandoned or not abandoned, we've hidden the separation of product data from product display. All right, so just off the bat, if I wanted to add a new product page to this site, I'm not actually selecting, I'm not just creating my product entities first and then creating a node that sort of references them. I can do it all kind of inline. So if I wanted to add a new bag and case here, I'd get the node edit form that had inline a product creation form. All right, so then I can, at the very least, when I'm creating products, I've reduced 2 steps now. I don't have to do these things separately and then reference them together. So that helps just for individual data entry, because you can also do like the T-shirt thing. We have, maybe let's go look at one. 9 different variations, and you can manage them all through that form. You can quickly update their prices from within that form. Let's go look at the hoodie. All right. Baby Got Pantheon is my site here. And yeah, so you can see here that I'm managing the sort of the products in bulk. I can update the images, update the prices, enable, disable certain variations, add new options, that kind of thing. all from within the node edit form. That doesn't help me in bulk. In bulk, I'd actually come to my product interface, where inside of Commerce Kickstart 2, not only do we have this inline entity form module allowing for product editing and creation inline with the node form, we also have sort of supercharged our views so that on the product view, I can do bulk operations. So maybe there's a way to, say, bulk update your product pricing. You can rig that up through rules in the views bulk operations module. And I can do the same sort of inline quick editing. So I can update the product pricing, save, and kind of just scroll down through my whole product list and update the products as I go. This still isn't the most ideal scenario. Another thing that I might do would be to create a view that just listed out all of the products and then used the editable fields module to just sort of make the price field sort of be editable in line, so I can show a page of 50 products and let them just sort of cruise all down through the list, updating the prices as necessary. That was like what I did when I was managing the catalog on our OS Commerce site. Fortunately, now you don't have to code for that. You can just build that through the views module and editable fields. So there's that. I mean, there's always also the opportunity to just let them manage that through some external system and then feed the updates into your Commerce site using the Commerce Feeds module or the Commerce Migrate module or something. So, export, they do all of their updates in QuickBooks, they export it to CSV or something, and then you just, process the update all in one fell swoop or something. I probably should cede the floor. I'm not sure who's next, but I'm sure they want to get up here and get set up. But I appreciate your time and love to talk more afterwards in the hallway or whatever. So, there you go.